The wind howled across the desert of modern-day Namibia, but buried beneath those sands lies the imprint of a monster that defies imagination. Picture yourself wading in a swamp some 280 million years ago. You feel an uneasy calm as dark water laps at your knees. Suddenly a head the size of a toilet seat erupts from the murk. Its mouth snaps shut, interlocking fangs clamping down like a vice. Before you have time to scream, you're sucked under by a creature larger than you are. This is no Hollywood beast. It's a real animal scientists named Geisia genei. They discovered its skull lying in an outcrop in Namibia's Gai-As Formation, and its jaws tell a story that rewrites the early history of life on land. How did an animal that looks like a cross between a salamander and an eel grow so enormous? And why was the water safer than the land in its day? To answer those questions, we have to journey back to a time when Earth was frozen at the poles yet sweltering at the equator, and uncover the secrets of a monstrous ambush predator. The discovery of a swamp monster. In July 2024, an international team of paleontologists led by Claudia Marsicano and Jason Pardo announced a remarkable discovery, a giant amphibian fossil with a 2-foot-long skull. They found several specimens embedded in the rocks of the Gai-As Formation in northwest Namibia. The animal was so striking that Claudia knew instantly she was looking at something completely different. The skull looked like a flattened ring, broad, rounded, and squared off at the snout. The researchers nicknamed it the toilet seat head, and the name stuck because the shape isn't just a curiosity, it's a clue to how the creature hunted. They christened the genus Geisia in honor of the Gai-As Formation, and the species name genei pays tribute to the late paleontologist Jenny Clack, who specialized in early tetrapods. Finding the fossils was a shock. 4 individuals lay eroded out of the rock, including one with a nearly complete skull and backbone. The skull alone was over 60 centimeters long, about as wide as a toilet lid, and the animal's total length may have reached 2.5 to 4 meters. Marsicano described the front of the skull as lined with unusually large, interlocking fangs that formed a unique bite for early tetrapods. Pardo described his first look at the specimen this way. It was the only clearly visible part at that time, and it showed very unusually interlocking large fangs, he said. This discovery immediately raises questions. Why did this animal grow so big? Why did it have such bizarre jaws? To find answers, we need to look closely at its body and how it lived. Anatomy of a giant. If you picture a salamander crossed with a moray eel, you're starting to imagine Geisia genei. The creature's long, flexible body was likely up to 4 meters long. It probably had a deep tail fin to propel it through the water, and its limbs were either very small or absent altogether. From above, the skull looked like a broad circle with a squared-off snout, hence the toilet seat analogy. Along the edges of that circle were huge, tusk-like teeth that meshed together when the jaws closed. These interlocking fangs gave Geisia a bite unlike any other early tetrapod. Why would an animal evolve such a strange head? Pardo offers a hint. A big, flat head allowed Geisia to open its mouth quickly, creating a vacuum that sucked prey inside. The suction is similar to what modern flat-headed fish and frogs use when they ambush prey. Once the prey was inside the mouth, the interlocking teeth snapped shut, impaling and trapping the victim. Pardo described the entire front of the mouth as just giant teeth. Together, the suction-feeding and the fang-lined jaws turned Geisia genei into a living trap. The body of this animal tells us more. It likely spent most of its time lurking on the bottom of swamps and lakes. Its deep tail fin suggests strong swimming ability, but it probably wasn't built for endurance or pursuit. Instead, the monster relied on stealth, waiting in ambush until an unwary fish, shark, or smaller tetrapod came within reach. Then it would lunge, open its toilet seat head, and let suction and teeth do the rest. This mode of hunting would have been effective in murky waters where visibility was low. The size and anatomy indicate a top predator, but they also hint at the environment Geisia called home. So, what did this habitat look like? To understand why a swamp creature could grow to human length, we need to travel back in time and explore the early Permian world.
A world of ice and swamps. Gaiacia geniae lived about 280 million years ago during the early Permian period. At that time, Earth's continents were fused into the supercontinent Gondwana in the south and Laurasia in the north. Namibia, now near the Tropic of Capricorn, was then located at high latitude, near the 60th parallel, almost level with today's northern Antarctica. An ice age was drawing to a close. Near the equator, swamps were drying up and forests were spreading, but closer to the poles, wetlands persisted and patches of ice and glaciers still dotted the landscape. This mixture of cold conditions and swampy refuges created unique ecological niches. While much of the supercontinent was arid and seasonally extreme, these southern swamps were lush and full of life. The presence of a giant predator like Gaiacia implies a well-established food web. Large animals need plentiful prey, and the region must have supported fish, freshwater sharks, and other tetrapods. Unlike equatorial regions where early tetrapods were becoming rare or evolving into new forms as the climate dried, the cooler southern habitats acted as refuges where ancient lineages could persist and even thrive. These environmental conditions also explain why Gaiacia looks so archaic. To see why, let's look at where it fits in the evolutionary tree. A glimpse into deep time. Modern four-limbed animals, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, belong to the crown tetrapods. They share features that evolved after their ancestors left the water. Gaiacia geniae, however, is a stem tetrapod, meaning it lies outside this crown group. It retains primitive features that were common millions of years earlier. Pardo notes that Gaiacia has some particular bones and other features that are lost soon after tetrapods evolved. In other words, its lineage split off long before mammals, reptiles, or amphibians appeared. What's remarkable is that fossils of such archaic animals are usually small and rare. In the tropical ecosystems of Europe and North America, most ancient tetrapods became extinct or tiny as climates warmed and drier conditions favored new forms. Yet in the far south, archaic tetrapods like Gaiacia were large and abundant. Marsicano's team found multiple individuals, and Pardo described Gaiacia as the primary predator in its ecosystem. This suggests that the southern swamps were refuges where ancient lineages flourished long after they disappeared elsewhere. The existence of this giant salamander-like creature also challenges ideas about when tetrapods diversified. It indicates that the split between stem and crown groups involved geographic and climatic factors. While life at the equator evolved into the ancestors of modern animals, cooler southern regions harbored holdovers from earlier times. Studying Gaiacia helps paleontologists track when and where the ancestors of mammals and reptiles emerged. But how did Gaiacia thrive as an apex predator? Its success likely hinged on its hunting strategy and the rich ecosystem that surrounded it. The Predator's Toolkit. Imagine standing in waist-deep water with tall ferns and club mosses towering overhead. Beneath the surface lies Gaiacia. It presses its flattened head against the mud, the ring-shaped skull blending with the bottom. When a fish or smaller tetrapod swims close, the monster suddenly lifts its head. The broad skull creates a vacuum, pulling water and prey inside, much like a giant syringe. The jaws slam shut and the interlocking fangs dig in. There's little chance of escape. Pardo notes that those huge teeth would have been used to grab and kill prey, fish, freshwater sharks, other tetrapods, and perhaps even smaller Gaiacia. Ambush predators often move slowly, and Gaiacia fits that profile. Its long body and deep tail indicate it could lunge quickly but not chase for long distances. The large head provided room for powerful jaw muscles and anchored those massive fangs. Suction feeding also explains the toilet seat shape. A wide mouth opening means more water and prey can be sucked in. That design is seen today in some flat-headed fish and frogs. Being top predator meant Gaiacia shaped the food chain around it. A modern crocodile controls which animals can safely approach a riverbank. Similarly, Gaiacia would have been the terror of its swamp. Its presence indicates other animals must have adapted accordingly. Smaller tetrapods may have developed armor or burrowing habits, and fish populations must have been large enough to sustain such a predator. Unfortunately, we know little about its exact prey, but evidence from the surrounding rocks includes fossils of fish and other aquatic vertebrates, hinting at a vibrant ecosystem. The fact that Gaiacia existed at the tail end of a long ice age suggests that as soon as ice receded, ecosystems at high latitudes became productive. Understanding the predator's life also means asking how it grew so big. The answer may lie in abundant food, absence of larger predators, and the refuge provided by these southern wetlands. While terrestrial life at the time saw fierce competition and new body plans emerging, the water offered relative safety, at least until Gaiacia appeared. And that leads us to wonder what else shared its world.
Life around the monster. The fossilized remains of Gaiacia come from a horizon that also preserves fish bones and traces of other aquatic life. Researchers believe there were freshwater sharks in these swamps. Those sharks were small compared with their marine relatives, but they still provided a meal for Gaiacia. Other tetrapods, perhaps smaller amphibians or early reptile relatives, likely slipped through the waters and along muddy banks. The presence of a large ambush predator implies these animals had to be wary. Some may have evolved tougher skin, spines, or burrowing behaviors to avoid becoming dinner. On land, meanwhile, the early Permian world was beginning to change. Farther north, therapsids, the ancestors of mammals, and early reptiles were diversifying. In equatorial regions, drying climates favored animals that could cope with heat and limited water. But in the cooler south, life held on to its primitive roots. The swamps where Gaiacia lived were relics of earlier times, with flora dominated by giant ferns and seed ferns. When we consider the global context, we see a tale of two worlds. On land, new creatures were on the rise. In the water, ancient giants lingered. The existence of Gaiacia thus provides a snapshot of Earth at a critical turning point. As climates shifted, some environments served as museums of ancient life, while others became laboratories for evolution. The monster with the toilet seat head straddled these worlds, an ancient holdover thriving alongside the first steps of the modern age. But what does its discovery mean for us today? This monster teaches us not just because it's strange, but because it answers and raises questions about how life evolves and survives. It shows that geographic and climatic refuges can allow ancient lineages to persist millions of years past their expected extinction. It reminds us that the early evolution of tetrapods wasn't uniform across the globe. Different regions followed different paths. This insight helps scientists trace the origins of traits that later appear in reptiles, birds, and mammals. The discovery also highlights the importance of exploring understudied regions. Namibia's Gaiacia Formation is remote and was once thought to contain mostly small fossils. Yet there, half buried in the rock, lay a skull the size of a manhole cover. Gaiacia is big, and it is abundant, Pardo remarked. Its abundance suggests there might be more undiscovered giants waiting to rewrite our understanding of pre-dinosaur life. Finally, Gaiacia captures our imagination because it blurs the line between familiar and alien. Its eel-like body and salamander front may seem monstrous, but they also show how adaptable life can be. In one animal, we see remnants of fish-like gills, amphibian limbs, and reptile-like teeth. Such mosaics remind us that evolution is not a straight line, but a branching tree with surprising holdovers and dead ends. The monster with the toilet seat head lurked at a time when Earth was both frozen and thawing, ancient yet on the cusp of change. Gaiacia geniae lay in wait on the swamp floor, its broad skull poised to suck in anything foolish enough to swim by. With its interlocking fangs and enormous size, it dominated the waters of a world where most creatures were still crawling from the seas.
The southern swamps of Gondwana provided refuge for this archaic titan, allowing it to grow large and thrive while its relatives elsewhere dwindled. Today, its fossilized bones lie exposed on a desert outcrop. They remind us that the history of life is full of unexpected turns and forgotten giants. As researchers continue to unearth bones in Namibia and beyond, they might discover even more astonishing creatures. Perhaps under another layer of rock, there's a beast, stranger still, waiting to reveal that our planet's past was wilder than we ever imagined. Until then, the legend of Gyaecia geniae, the monster with the toilet seat head, will keep us peering into the murky waters of Earth's deep history.